Welcome to the Choralosophy Podcast. Let me just start out by telling you a little story about what happened yesterday. I tried to do my first ever live stream episode and failed miserably. So there's that. Had a couple hundred people jump on to the first minute of my chat with Michael McGlynn. Probably would have gotten lots of people as we chatted for the next 2 hours, thinking we were live. But at about a minute in, my Wi-Fi disconnected. I reconnected it, thinking I was still live, but apparently after looking back, the live stream was severed, but my Zoom kept telling me I was live, so I thought we were all good and we just kept on chatting. Now the good news is, it was being recorded, and it ended up being a really, really fun conversation. It was really nice to have a conversation about music again. I've been focused so much on the pandemic and about the choral industry's response. This is just not in this episode at all. My chat with Michael McGlynn, who is just a fascinating human being and gives us a lot to ponder and a lot to think about, especially related to this pause of our art form as being an opportunity to think about how we want to, in his words, reboot what we do as musicians, choral musicians, educators, all of that. So it's a fascinating conversation. We really get into some challenging ideas about our profession, and so you're going to hear lots of interesting topics because we didn't script this one at all. Like most of the time when I have a guest on, I have a topic that I want to talk about with that guest and get their feedback on. This had no predetermined ideas at all. We just decided to turn on a conversation and just see where it went. So we started talking about Anuna and his life in that world of music making, and then it just went. It just went where it went. So shout out real quick to the Patreon sponsors and the growing group, continuing to grow over there on Patreon, that is really keeping this show alive, which I super appreciate. If you appreciate the content we are creating here at the Choralosophy Podcast, I encourage you to head over to patreon.com/Choralosophy. And for as little as $3 a month, you can jump on over there and get some behind-the-scenes communication about the show. I publish a Patreon-only episode once a month over there, in addition to putting some extra materials. There's a t-shirt you can get at the $5 level, but you can get in over there at $3 a month. And you'd be surprised at how much that helps with the expenses of the show so far. After about a year and a half of doing the show, I'm kind of plugging away at trying to break even on all the expenses of putting on something like this, and these people are killing it for me over there. The show has a producer level. Our producers are Christopher Vasquez, Kyle Peterson, Michael Herron, and Ryan Main. So head on over there and help us out if you can. Now we can say hello to anybody who's on Facebook, and I think I'm still working on the YouTube.
Hello, everybody out there, wherever you are. Greetings from Dublin, Ireland, as opposed to Dublin in America.
Is there a Dublin, to your knowledge, in America?
There is. There's. I have no idea. I think it's in Ohio or somewhere. I don't actually know, to be 100% honest. But there's a lot of things about America I don't know. I haven't been there as often, probably, as I should have, considering my group are associated so much with the whole Irish Celtic revival. We only started touring America in 2012. No, yeah, we did a tour in 2007 for the first time, and we haven't been back since.
Okay, so, and I just saw in the chat, Emmy said that there is a Dublin, Georgia.
Yeah, there probably is. It could be there, and it's somewhere, Georgia, Ohio.
I bet you there's more than one. And
America's a small place,
right? So maybe we should do another geography quiz. Where is the original Zealand?
Zealand, that's in the Netherlands. That's I can't remember whereabouts. Not sure if it's up near the Zuider Zee or something. I tour a lot there. I should know more about the Netherlands, but. And in fact, considering the fact that it is extremely small, I have no excuse for not knowing.
Well, do you prefer the old Zealand to the New Zealand?
The old days of Zealand in the 14th century. I remember them well, before the floods.
Well, I think I'm pretty sure that in America we assume that anyone with an Irish accent has just been alive since the beginning of time. So,
Well, I think that is actually a really good point. I think in America, the perception of Ireland is, I don't know, I think if I ask you, if you were going to define Irish people in two ways. First of all, I'll ask you two questions. The first one is, tell me about what your general perception of somebody who is Irish would be.
okay. General perception of an Irish person. Well, I've met several, so it's kind of hard. I think um, before I had been there and before I had actually seen it, I would probably have made, I bet you I would have made a similar assumptions about the stereotype that people tend to make about people around where I live in the Midwestern United States, that we all live on farms and we all have, cows and Southern accents and those types of things. And so I probably would have made similar assumptions about it. Irish people all have gigantic green lawns, like as far as the eye can see. Like everybody's yard is a rolling hill of some kind, and of course, running a lot of the stereotypes I would get from watching your Anuna videos. Is that you probably wander through cloudy scenes and sing as you walk around. All Irish people, I'm sure, do that. How close?
Well, okay, so that's question one. So tell me, what would your perception of Irish choral music be?
Well, I mean, honestly, outside of your group, I don't know a whole lot. I would, I've seen, I think is like a Trinity College Dublin or something. Is that
there's a choir. Well, there's choirs. All the major colleges have choirs. Trinity College, I actually used to conduct a choir in University College Dublin and in Trinity College Dublin. The perception of choral music coming from Ireland. I was in Chicago at the ACDA National Conference there in 2011. And that was the first time I met all my colleagues. I hadn't met American choral people before. I was an eminent scholar at Florida Atlantic University with Dr. Stacey Lee Russo, and we were working on a large project. And I went to ACDA that year, and I met everybody, and I didn't actually really understand how big choral music was in America. And also, I think what the perception of choral music was from my country. And I was shocked to find out that actually I was the perception of choral music from Ireland, which was kind of strange, because in Ireland, I would actually not be, I have no connection at all with Irish choral music at all in any respect, either as composer or as a choral director. When I went to ACDA, I made the decision at that stage that I would become a citizen of the world of choral music and not one that was beholden to Ireland in any way. And over the last 9 years in particular, I have changed the way Anuna functions. So singers now come from 10 different countries. And while there are a lot of Irish singers involved, and they come from Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, but they come from the island of Ireland. We have singers from Slovenia, from the Netherlands, from Italy, more Slovenians, Americans. I keep forgetting, big pile of them from Iceland. And we've a Russian hanging on by his fingernails. I hope he's watching.
Now, is there an origin story for Anuna that we wouldn't be able to find on a website? Like, was the business model that you just explained, was that always the plan, or did that just evolve over time naturally?
That's a brilliant question. I haven't been asked that for many, 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 many years. It's kind of an interesting one to think about. The business model for Anuna was that there wasn't a business model of any description. When I began singing, the first choir I ever sang in was when I was 19. And that was the first choir I ever heard. I hadn't actually ever heard a choir before that in person. I'd only ever heard recordings of things. And even then, I think the only piece I remember that was choral was Ave Verum by Mozart and Lux Aeterna by Ligeti, which is kind of a strange sort of combination. But I had them in my mixtape. I had a great mixtape that I used to drag out, and I'd have David Bowie and The Clash and then I'd have Ligeti. I wasn't really into Mozart really at the time. So for me, when I came to choral music, it was like opening a window that had been closed for many years, and suddenly the air came in. And I remember somebody described at the time that it was like how I could describe that sensation of coming across choral music for the first time, and it was like watching the sunset for the first time and seeing it. And I think that it suddenly struck me that this was something I wanted to do. I wanted to explore it more. I wanted to develop it more within myself. And there were a couple of obstacles. The first one was that I started asking questions because I couldn't understand why other people were involved in choral music for themselves. And I was really only interested in choral music as a means to looking at the beauty of it. And I use that word very carefully because I don't really hear music, I kind of see it. For me, it's like a cloud of images. And I was so angry. I was so angry because I hadn't been exposed to choral music as a child. And our culture, you see, doesn't have choral music, indigenous choral music as part of its culture. It has imported choral music. And in fact, I've caused some controversy here by claiming that Anuna has created a new form of choral music in Ireland. Well, it has. It is the only group that specifically has based itself on the concepts and the ideas that are inherent within our traditional singing forms. But that's not what people would think. That doesn't mean we just sing Irish diddly-idly songs or moch bono things. It's more the philosophy behind our tradition, our language, and our culture, and that informs Anuna.
Could you back up for just a second, and for our Americans listening, define diddly idly?
Diddly idly is most of the crap that you guys listen to on St. Patrick's Day.
So the Irish stereotype that we were discussing earlier.
The Irish stereotype, but bear in mind, hidden within the Irish stereotype is the truth. And I have no objection to that. There's nothing I enjoy more than meeting a bunch of African Americans wearing green hats, saying, "I'm Irish." And you were going, "You are Irish." because actually anyone wearing a green hat is Irish, because being Irish is really a state of mind. And for that moment, it's not definable. Being Irish is just, I live here. That's Ireland out there out my window, and it's lovely and everything. I don't think anything belongs to any of us. We're only visiting. So for that moment, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. Some of the ridiculously silly, sentimental ideas that make up the perception of Ireland are successful for a reason. It's because they're real in their own way, It's about joy and fun and talking and laughing and having a few drinks and falling around the place with a couple of friends and eating crappy green food. Sure, isn't that what Christmas is about? In so many ways.
Well, I was going to ask,
a holiday.
Right up until the point where you said it wasn't definable, I was going to ask you to define it. So that's too bad.
Well, it's not. You see, but that's not really part of our culture. In many ways,
right.
Our culture is much more complex than that. Way more complex. And Anuna bases itself, and the philosophy behind it bases itself in our culture, in our arts, and in our landscape. And remember, landscape is just a thing that we look at.
Mm-hmm.
In itself, it means nothing. It's how we look at it. It's how we interpret what we see. And artists and writers and singers and in the traditional musicians have looked at that landscape, and they have seen something in it, and then they have attempted to create music around that. And Anuna bases itself in that way, whereas the rest of choral music in Ireland does not. It looks to other choral music forms for its inspiration. So, for example, there's a very strong allegiance and connection to the Kudai school. An awful lot of Kudai students practice here as well. Many of them actually have a lot of interest and excitement in connection to American choral music and some of the extraordinary innovations which are occurring there. But Anuna exists outside of that. It takes what it needs and only takes exactly as much as it needs in order to move forward. So we don't take the trappings, we don't take the empty gestures, we try not to take any ego, we try not to take the sensation that people are beholden one to the other. At our center is the concept of community. And our traditional singing is based in that idea. So the style of singing is called shamnos, which is that very highly ornamented traditional sound. In fact, the most well-known aficionado of it would be, for those people that know Celtic Woman, it would be Ava McMahon. Actually, she was in Anuna. The concept of carrying on something that is very old and then carrying it through time to the community today, and they appreciate it and they learn from it. And therefore, she doesn't sing accompanied because that would distract from the words and it would distract from the melody. So Anuna, its basis is that you are a single representative of the community and you are singing with others who are single representatives of that community. And that's a very complex thing in its simplicity. So when singers come in, particularly American singers come in to Anuna for the first time, the level of proactivity that is expected from them, particularly the professional ones, is massive and a huge learning curve. And the line I get from American singers, I can sing in whatever style you want. I can be what you want me to be. And I say, well, I don't want you to sing in a style. I want you to sing with your natural voice. And I want you to sing without distortion, without showing us your effort. And when you do that correctly, and you breathe with the people around you, and you do what they do with the same intent in what you do, and understand the words that you are singing, then the word blend does not apply to your work. And I hate the word blend. I think it's appalling because it's putting two things together that are not compatible. Yeah. We celebrate that difference. We celebrate your voice as an opera singer, you're a folk singer, you're a rock singer, you're an early music singer. Be yourself. And if you're both doing it with the same degree of focus on techniques, which we teach the singers, then you're off.
I don't like the use of the word blend either, because it tends to cause singers to take what is special out of their voice. And then the choir sounds overall less special. Whereas I like the way you described it, because what I try to do with my singers is I want you to sing with your voice. I like that as well. But there has to be certain things that we agree on in the way we conceptualize the music in our head, because that's what will end up coming out. So I use the word audiate, just picturing the music in your head. We have to agree on that. We have to be hearing the music in our head in the same way. But then what comes out is your voice with that intent. I really like that a lot. So of course I shout out to a couple of my friends, Nick and Laura, who have sung with you. And all of that,
Laura Inman.
Yeah, and Nick Stoppel. And one of the things that's interesting too about that is American singers, I've found, and this is not about the two of them, they're awesome. I just feel like a lot of times with American singers, you put a group of adults together, adult American classically trained singers, and we will walk into a room, say there's 16 of us, and we will walk into the room with 16 different ideas in our head of what a choral sound is supposed to be. And so, that's one of the biggest challenges. I always talk about how with my youth choirs, with my student choirs, oftentimes I can achieve blend a whole lot faster and easier just because they don't have competing ideas in their head of what it's supposed to sound like. We just talk about what's it supposed to sound like, and then they sing, and we get to that blend idea. Then when I work with adults, it takes a lot of energy and time. Now, with the singers, when you bring singers in who are not Irish, do you have to invest quite a bit of time in getting them to understand that picture of the sound?
No, because we don't do very much singing in general. We just talk. So you have to, I mean, I can see where you're coming from. I think that the problem with adult singers is very simple to explain. And that's that choral music has been massively overcomplicated. And there's a whole industry has built up around making it that way. When in fact, choral music is extremely simple. And the problem is, you see, you already have an indigenous form of choral music there in America, which in some ways is, I mean, I did notice, and it was very telling when I went over there, how little understanding there is of what is going on in gospel. I mean, it really does shock me to a certain extent that people look to European models for their inspiration when in fact gospel itself and the African American tradition of singing is so much more natural in the way that it is done, that, you know, it's like, well, we do it right in Europe, and no, we don't do it right in Europe. If we go back 200 years, in fact, not even 200 years, yeah, exactly 200 years, we come to the era of the conductor, we come to Mendelssohn, and then later on we come to Wagner and Mahler. But before that, there weren't any conductors. But there were the people that they time, as we'd say, we give it an old bit. In fact, the English composer Colin Malby, I spoke to him at a extremely good Indian meal in London, and I asked him about this concept of the conductor, and he said, well, I was playing the organ, and then one day someone said to me, oh, the choir need somebody to beat time, and he'd go down, and that was Colin. And he was my inspiration. His conducting technique was this. That was his conducting technique. And I couldn't really understand that when I worked with him as a very young person, because what I couldn't understand was not what he was doing. It was more that the singers around me didn't understand what he was doing, because they kept talking about technique and conducting technique. And Colin, with the greatest respect to him, didn't really have any. But what he used to do was he used to say, people around me saying, oh, he's not getting us to blend and he's not getting us to keep time there. And look, we're not matching our vowels. And he would say, but that's your job. That's your job. It's not mine. And I thought, my God, that's really common sense. So when singers come into Anuna from any background, unless they have these really personalized affectations, I mean, we get that sometimes with opera singers when they come in, where they come in and an A vowel doesn't sound like an A vowel, an E vowel doesn't sound like an E. And we have to explain to them that say the word and now sing it. Because the person beside you is singing an A vowel and you're singing an rarg vowel. And rarg is grand and everything, but it actually isn't what the word means. So if it says the cat sat on the mat, I'm just looking at my cat actually up in your window, is about to commit suicide. Oh, there you go. Oh, she's gone next door. If you say the cat sat on the mat and it sounds like the crot sat on the mat, then if you think about it, the singer is transmitting their effort to sing that. They're not transmitting the words. If you're making an effort to sing something as basic as that, then you don't have any singing technique.
Yeah.
So don't come in and tell us what to do. Go away and work out what it is that you have been told that is not accurate. I mean, another thing I have with a lot of American singers, young American singers, is this use of vibrato. And we have it here to a certain extent in Ireland, where you get a young singer coming in and they get totally confused when they come into Anuna, and they start talking about straight singing and they sing about lack of vibrato. Vibrato is natural to the human voice. Vibrato that sounds unnatural is not natural to the human voice. Opera singers are not generating a natural sound. What they're doing is they are amplifying a natural sound. So the best opera singers, I'm not so concerned about whether she looks and whether you see the effort she's making to do it. It's more that she is using her body like a machine to amplify the sound and send it out in a completely unnatural way. I mean, it's really extraordinary. So the amount of technique and thought that has to go into that is beyond belief. And opera singers, particularly at the high end of the business, are like, I really have to say that those people that sing in choral music that don't talk to opera singers of repute, who, and I don't mean people that have a good reputation, I mean people that you want to go and listen to and don't sound like a bag of cats being strangled. Those people think about singing in the way that we should all think about singing. They're actually creating a huge sound, and they're trying to make it be produced in as natural way as possible. And of course, the best, if you want to see two people trying to do the same thing, look at a child of the age of 4, and then look at an opera singer who's good, and they're doing the same things. It's the same technique.
Right.
Anyone that is giving you information that doesn't make logical sense should be called out. And when you bring that into my group, the singers will call you out. People will say, why are you putting vibrato in the middle of the phrase? Does your voice naturally sing like that? What's that sound? So vibrato is essential in your voice. And then you have other singers who come in and they sing with no vibrato. Oh, my voice naturally is no vibrato. If your voice has no vibrato, it's not a natural thing, because your voice is naturally relaxed in the way it works. And if the vocal cords are relaxed and the muscles in the neck are relaxed and the jaw is relaxed and the tongue is relaxed, you'll have vibrato.
Mm-hmm.
So these are not controversial ideas. These are most good opera singing teachers or teachers of opera will advocate. You do not transmit the effort. If you're transmitting the effort, it is not a natural thing. The biggest problem with a lot of choirs is that they have a conductor in front of them. If we go back to what I was saying about Colin Mawby, before Mendelssohn came along, conductors were one of many. They were one of the ensemble. So therefore, they were part of a relationship which was proactive and very different. So then you have people standing up in front who people would come to see the conductor, and then they're in front of these bigger orchestras, and then these choirs are there, and they're bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then the orchestra goes away, and then you have the conductor standing in front of the choir. And they're orchestral conductors conducting choirs. So suddenly you have orchestral technique being applied to something which actually has diminished the role of the choir. No longer is that relationship an equal relationship.
Yeah.
It is the maestro. The maestro has come in. I get called maestro quite a lot. I don't even know what it means. I think it's a credit card here in Europe. And for me, looking at that relationship, what's wonderful to see in the USA in particular is that is people know that. And I do find that a lot of conducting technique in particular has been developed to try and nullify that. So you developed something to nullify something unnatural. Well, what Anuna do is we just nullify the concept of the conductor entirely. And that means there's no conductor. I've never conducted Anuna, never. And yet, I can take a masterclass with the conductor. And the reason is because once the conductor assumes the correct role and the correct relationship, they usually go, oh, because most conductors like you, Chris, are working so hard to do work for your ensemble that you don't need to do. Mm-hmm. So you have to train your ensemble, or let's put it in a better language, allow your ensemble to take control of what they are doing. And then the relationship is different. You are not a conductor like a bus conductor. Mm-hmm. You are an artist, and you are expressing your artistic view of the music that these artists are singing. I hear that word a lot in America, but I don't believe it as much as I should. And when that relationship becomes a meeting of two minds, a meeting of artistry, then the conductor is taking their artistry and passing that backwards. And it's not about beating time, and it's not about breaths, and it's not about meter, and it's not about style. Music then breathes. The misconception of what Anuna does is that it looks like, because of the way we dress, because of the way we present ourselves, and the beautiful images of young people walking through forests and over hills being attacked by antflies or in bogs. If you saw the outtakes of those. But those concepts of the way Anuna is presented are based on what the music is about, because the music is about the landscape. Music is about ideas of landscape. Yeah,
No, that's all really good, and I actually share a lot of that philosophy in terms of the role of the conductor in the ensemble. And I actually, being fully American, I see all of those things, all of those criticisms. I actually agree with them. Yeah, the way I would kind of frame it for you, in my world, like I was talking about before, I work with a group of adult singers, but that's very, very part-time. It's a professional ensemble, but we hardly ever see each other. So oftentimes when we come together, it's for the first time in 3 months, and we might have 3 rehearsals. And there's not really a sense of that rapport that can be established over a long period of time. But one of the things that we always set out as a goal for that group of adults is that as I sing with you in the ensemble, we don't want to have to respond to my gesture very much. We want this to be, because I sing in the choir, we don't have a conductor standing out front, and I always say from the first rehearsal, I would like to not have to show anything, like ever on my. But one of
well, it is possible.
yes,
I've been doing it for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
And what's more, it becomes mystical. The relationship becomes a mystical relationship. And I don't mind saying that. In Anuna, I haven't mentioned it yet, but in Anuna, we have only one word. The answer to everything is to breathe. And breathe correctly, and breathe in the way you should, and breathe together. And we can start. I mean, we did a concert in The Hague, I remember about 2 years ago, and it was a very large venue, and we had 12 of us, and 6 women were in the auditorium, and they were singing a piece of mine, actually, that was commissioned by Chanticleer, Song of the Wind, our McGlynn, and it's really difficult. And 2 of the girls the 2 sopranos who were singing together were facing away from each other, and they were at least, I'll think about it in feet, they were at least 30 feet away from each other, facing in different directions, and they're singing in unison. And I remember standing on the stage where the guys were standing in a row of 6, and the unity of the actual ensemble was extraordinary, but there's no physical way we could have actually heard each other. So the question is not what techniques we employed to do that. It's more that we were able to do that. And I stood on stage, and that was the moment I thought, yeah, we're doing something very, very unusual here. we'll do like a 12-day tour on one rehearse. Shouldn't admit it, but once everyone thinks in the same way, then it's like wearing that pair of underpants that you have one, Chris. All guys have one, Just put it on, and then you come back in 2 years' time, and your wife says, "Is that the pair I bought you 2 years ago?" And then you say, "Oh yeah, I haven't worn them since." But you see, that you've had those underpants for the last 20 years.
You might have lost me with that analogy, but I like it. Yeah, the way I love the way you're conceptualizing this. I think as American singers, it's hard for us to do that because we are raised with that conductor relationship that you described, where I find that singers that I work with most frequently, there's like a subtle, almost like you could say it's a millisecond of a delay between what the conductor does and what the singer will do, because we're kind of trained that we have to wait for the conductor to show us anything, at which point we will respond, which means there's always a tiny delay. And I think after hearing you explain it, I'm now starting to picture that if we're not all conceptualizing the music at the same time with each other, then we become dependent on the conductor to show me my entrance. Show me how loudly I should be singing at that moment. Show me.
And think how much that actually inhibits the transmission of the composer's work.
Yeah.
See, this relationship with the composer, because that's really my job. I'm not a choral director at all. I mean, I would never classify myself as one. What I am is I generate ideas. And it's another thing as well, this whole idea of the conductor in control of what the choir does is another issue, that you'll get a piece by a living composer. And that's grand. Let's be honest, quite a lot of composers don't have a clue how to write for choir. In America, I think proportionally far more do, because so many choral singers and choral directors actually compose, and there's so many fine composers of merit. It's strange, actually, a friend of mine, David Rosso, I remember he's very modest about his work, and he was showing me some of his work, and all I could see was somebody who lived, breathed, and ate choral music. I mean, it wasn't easy, but by God, it was so beautiful because the lines were there. That wouldn't be something that you'd see easily in Ireland. What you'll get in Ireland instead, and in Europe in many cases, is composers writing things. And I will quote a colleague of mine. We went in for a competition when I was about 6. And we were awarded joint first place, and it was being sung by a choir that shall remain nameless, the BBC Singers. And I remember he was asked why it was that he had 2 pages without a rest for soprano 1. And he said, "Well, you're professional singers, you can sing it." And I thought, that's a load of arse. I mean, the relationship between the conductor, the singers, and the composer needs to know what they're doing. Otherwise, you're producing art. I don't believe that any good composer believes that they are producing art. It's one of the things I love most about Ola and Eric Whittaker's work. I never feel that they're producing art, or at least that they think they are. I think that they produce music that they like themselves. And then they really do their best to try and allow choirs to sing that music. And I would very much be somebody that, for me, the whole aim is to let the choir be able to sing the music. Music that is difficult for its own sake has a place, but it should only be difficult for its own sake because that is the vision of the composer. And there's an awful lot of stuff being written now which is just clever, and there's nothing bores me to death than clever music. I cannot stand it. Or funny music, for that matter. I don't find music very funny at all.
Yeah, it's not my favorite. It's not my favorite genre either. I wanted to share too.
When you're drunk, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Beer choir, by the way, are amazing. I miss beer choir so much.
Yeah, beer choir. I think beer choir is the first thing we should bring back after the pandemic.
Oh, I miss it so much.
Yeah,
we don't have it in Ireland at all.
Oh, that's too bad.
I only get it when I go over there.
Well, yeah. So my evidence that I think to when I hear you talk about this conductor relationship philosophy is that when I then work with my young singers again,
Mhm.
which I get to see them and I get to kind of be their introduction to choral singing, and so I can establish this idea with them right away, and so they don't know any better. Which is that one of the things I tell my students when they come in at age 14 or 15, and that's one of the things we struggle with around here a lot for a lot of my students. We are their first real choral experience, because we have an awesome um, choir program for the kids who are younger than that, but oftentimes they have to take general music courses and they don't do a lot of as much singing. And so then they
Mm.
get to our class and they're singing every day for the first time. And one of the things I teach them right away is that my job as your teacher is to teach myself out of a job. I, I don't I
That's
don't I don't want you to need me for anything. And so my kids are quite comfortable not being conducted. In fact, I've even been known to get up on the stage in front of 1,000 people, and just because I'm feeling like I don't want to conduct anymore, I'll just walk off the stage, and
mhm.
the kids don't even know I'm going to do it, and they
Mm.
just keep singing. And
Well, I
often,
think that that's an achievement in itself to be able to do that. I think that's a very brave thing to do as well.
well,
I
what I've discovered is oftentimes it ends up going better without me there.
But you've got to ask yourself why that is too, because I mean, while I do appreciate that there is a pyrotechnical reason for doing that, and there's almost like a smoke and mirrors concept behind it, I would always question not um, the idea of doing it, but for me, the value is they look up to you and they're watching you for guidance on a far greater level than we'd say a lot of adults will. You become part of their relationship to music is through you.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm always very careful when people do step off stage in front of choirs. Like I'm extremely against choral music, choral movement for its own sake. The moment choirs start moving on stage, I actually, I just have to turn away in horror. I have rarely seen it. I did see a choir at ACDA, a high school choir, moving on stage, and I thought it was the best thing I'd ever seen. I can't remember who they were, but they were from Florida. Absolutely unbelievable choir. Um, but because for me, you know, we have to be very careful about gestures. The reason that Anuna move is because it's ritualistic movement. And what people don't know about Anuna's work, they look at it and they say, oh my God, everyone is so graceful. And when they move, and then they do these extraordinary things of moving into auditoria and singing from like at the other side of an auditorium or up from in Tokyo, up from balcony number 5. And they're singing with people on stage with no amplification and actually not able to hear what they're singing. That's different. And the reason that kind of movement and those kind of effects work is because they have a purpose. For me, um, particularly when I'm dealing with movement, I would never get people to move on stage in secular work. For me, the concept of a ritual is really important. It doesn't matter what religion it is, ritual is part of every one. And in the original Christian churches, particularly in the 4th century, people didn't sit down and this is going to sound very familiar to you, but the people didn't sit down and watch the priest. They were in a play and they would be they would be the crowd responding to what the priest would say, and then they would move this way, and then something would happen, and
Hmm.
then it would happen like this. And the Chester mystery plays in the 12th century, 13th century, 14th century would be kind of part of that whole ethos. And out of that, we look at Quem Curitis, and the Dublin play in particular, which comes from the 14th century. Its ancestry would be from, I think, is that 9th? And those early chant-based um, uh, performances were always involving movement because but it was highly stylized movement. And stylized movement is awesome. service. Things happen in ways, I mean, if you understand them, then you're not really getting the whole point of religion. I would always be wary of any conductor that stands away from the choir, unless that relationship is one which is a proactive and generous and loving and connected relationship.
Well,
Then when they stand back, it's different.
Yeah, no, I think the purpose of it for me is not a choreographed movement at all. The purpose for me is sometimes with kids, one of the things I feel is oftentimes we are scraping things together to be prepared, at the last minute, and I find that those types of moments where I might decide at the last rehearsal, or maybe even in the concert, that I think we're going to do better on this piece if I'm not showing them anything, and it's
but
usually,
you're also a showman, and it's a show you're presenting.
yeah. Well,
do you know what I mean? And that
right.
excitement that you generate is the key to it all. There's nothing wrong with it,
Right.
and the audience love it, and the kids go, ah, and you go, oh God.
Yeah, no, I think what ends up happening is that they oftentimes, like what I was saying before, when I'm conducting them, showing it with my hands, it causes them to always have to wait for me to do a thing.
Yeah, precisely.
And then they're responding. And sometimes I find that to be true in the more highly rhythmic pieces that I do with kids, that if or faster tempo. So if I just get out of their way, it locks in. And then they're able to.
Well, there is a reason for that. There's a very good reason for that. I mean, I did a workshop with the choir here in Maynooth, which is outside of Dublin. And it was very interesting. I was dealing with a very good conductor, and he was beating a piece like this. And it was funny watching him do it. And I thought, oh my God, he's just beating the piece because that's what the rhythm is. So I said to him, when you come to the end of that phrase, breathe. When he did, there was the whole thing went this way then. Went into sort of like a wave instead of being like that. And the question was not, was I right? Nor was he right. The question was, is that what the composer intended or not? I remember I did a masterclass in Spain many years ago, and it was really funny. I was dealing with a group of choral conductors from across Spain, and I was very nervous because I don't really get terrified. It's like, a dog is lovely, but then when you meet 6 of them, it's not so lovely, one of them's bound to bite you, and then the pack will set in. And it was funny. We were doing a piece by Villalobos, and each conductor came up and they all conducted it, and they put these gestures in, and the choir went and they did the gestures. And then I said, okay, that's interesting. Now I said, I'll conduct it. And I conducted it like this. And then there was silence at the end of it. And somebody said, you didn't do anything. And I said, nothing written in the score. You just had the dynamic. The choir sang at a piano. And then one of the conductors said, oh, he's written all the dynamics into the score, hasn't he? I said, yeah. So that's kind of really important. I mean, a lot of people do my stuff, particular one piece called Gyantry, and it's always interesting watching people conducting it because the rhythm is written into it, so you don't need to emphasize it. And it's got a metronome marking, and that's the speed I want it. I don't want it at your interpretation of what you think it is. The metronome marking is there. I'm a contemporary composer. I am not a folk composer. This is not folk music. It's contemporary music. I'm still alive, for God's sake. It's lovely. I mean, a song I love as well, which Dulamon, which everybody knows, and it's got and you can be in your chin and you'll never be in your and I hear people going, and you can be in your chin and you'll never be in your and if as an Irish speaker I'm listening to that, I'm thinking, what are they singing about? You have to sing it at the speed that the words have meaning, and it's got a metronome marking on it.
You mean singing? Do you mean to say that singing Dulamon as fast as you can is not an accomplishment?
Well, it is an accomplishment, but not one that I would have wanted as the composer.
Yeah, yes.
So it is kind of, it is, bear in mind also, Chris, that none of my music, none of it was written to be sung by anyone besides Anuna. None of it. It is a complete surprise to me how successful I've been in America. It's a complete surprise because none of the stuff is written for choir. It's just written for Anuna. And I've only written it down because, I mean, the first order I got from America was from Chanticleer, and they took Dulamon, and that was in 1996, I think it was. And I sent them a handwritten copy of it with all the wrong notes written in it. So the original version of Dulamon has wrong notes in it.
That's really funny. Charles Bruffy made me memorize the solo for that, and I still have nightmares.
Charles's Irish is sublime.
Yeah, I think that I was in the group maybe one of the first times he started doing your music, because I'm old, so I haven't been in the group for a long time. But when I was young, and I was getting Irish coaching, and I was trying to memorize it, and it flew by so fast. And of course, with the Irish language on the page, for English speakers at first, it was the first time.
Yes, yes. The Irish language is very easy to pronounce. It's just, there's two problems. First one is that when it's written down, it looks different to the way it sounds, and that's a real problem.
Yeah.
And the reason that is because we're next to England, and as a result, we had to anglify our alphabet. And it's kind of funny, when people sing in Icelandic, or they sing in virtually any other language, French even at its most basic, they look at these and they learn off these unusual characters and these accents. But in Irish, they kind of go, this is English. It's not English. It's a foreign language of much greater age than English as well. And it is kind of very important that is right. I mean, I love the relationship that Charles has actually with Kansas City Chorale. It's really, it's a unique and special one. That's like a family. That's the kind of relationship that I'm talking about, that lovely sense of doing things together as a unit. And it really, I mean, when I worked with them some years ago, it was just like bliss. And I even got a chance to sing with them. Not very well, but I did sing. And I have that on my CV somewhere, I think. I try not to draw attention to the fact that I was so bad. I was going through midlife crisis at the time, you know.
Yeah. And now I imagine, is performing on a regular basis right now, since you're not doing it, obviously, is this something you miss?
No, I don't enjoy performance. What I do enjoy doing is I enjoy making the artistic creation on stage, and that's all I enjoy. And I'm really only at my best when I'm surrounded by artists. I'm not really interested in controlling things. So when I work with the choir, I'll spend most of the time just getting them to take the first breath. This is a great time for me because I don't have to write any music, which I'm not very good at doing anyway. I'm not very disciplined. I don't have to sing. I don't have to tour. And I know the choir are very upset about it because I know they love touring, but that's because they enjoy performing. For me, it's more the act of being with creative artists that's special. And I don't need to do that with singers. I can do that with other creative artists. Mm-hmm. And I am doing that at the moment. I'm using the time to look at new ideas, and I'm running that live stream. And it's kind of funny. I'm beginning to have people on that are really, really special. Last night I had Cortez from Chanticleer on. I just love Chanticleer so much. And the second half I had the lady who conducted, the first woman to conduct the Oscars, which was Emer Noon. And next week I have Isaac Cates, who is KC, I think.
Yeah, he's from here in Kansas City. Yeah,
he is one awesome guy, and the Ordained are just one amazing ensemble. It's hitting the feels, you know. That's what you'd say. And my second guest is the Swedish, she's Finnish. She's a Swedish-speaking Finn called Linda Lampenius. She's a superstar in Scandinavia. She's also a virtuoso violinist. And these people, I'm having this wonderful experience of being able to reconnect with people and connect with a bunch of like-minded jazz heads in Japan, and we're doing a project together called Mouse on the Keys. And for me, you know, I'm into breaking boundaries, and I'm looking at some dance music, and I'm looking at I'm making a film. I'm actually making 3 films at the moment. I've just made one, which is off next week. And then I'm making a documentary about myself, my favorite person. And I'll be completing that quite soon. So you'll be able to see more of me.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah, everyone should definitely check that out.
I'm most excited about that one.
That does sound very neat, very cool. I like the idea. You know, I definitely identify with what you said about not really missing the performance aspect, because I've been, of course, I've been reflecting a lot on what it is that I do and why I love it, because we've had nothing but time to reflect. And I think what I miss is I miss not being able to have the everyday relationships with other people.
That's it.
And the interchanges and the collaborations. I love choral music, but I don't find myself hankering or yearning for any particular music to do. I think what I miss is the act of collaborating with people, watching with my young singers, watching them experience something musical for the first time. That's
the correct relationship. It's that concept of experiencing it together. And it is something that I have to say that I do see so much in America. I mean, I do see quite a lot of control, and I do see it in Europe as well. This concept of controlling a choir and choirs being unable to function without being told what to do. And that's unhealthy. That's not healthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that, you know, people need, I think, you know, I've been asked a lot about what I feel about choral music in the last few months and what's happened and where it's going and what can we do to save it. And I've watched quite a lot of the broadcasts online about it. And I have to say, a lot of people are talking about what's gone. For me, I think it's brilliant. We've been given an opportunity to start again and reboot. And people hankering after what they had need to grow up and move on. It will not be the same. People have changed, as you say yourself, Chris. You've had time to reflect on what you do and the reasons why you do it. Most of us have been rushing towards a point that we didn't know where it was. We didn't know where we were going. And now we've been stopped. And we need to ask questions of ourselves. We need to look as well, I mean, at the way choirs are made up. You know, I mean, I don't mind saying it, but there are ideas out there which are completely unique. I was talking with Paul Phoenix yesterday he's in Hong Kong. He's ex-King Singers. And he was telling me about a Finnish group called Nomad and how they were formed. And I mean, I don't want to go into details with it because in some ways it's so startling that I actually I'm still trying to digest what he told me. But what the essence of what it was breaking apart choirs and making individuals be completely proactive on their own, so that choirs aren't about 20 people being together anymore. Choirs become about 6 people being together, or 4 people being together. And if we look at the music of the 16th century, I mean, I don't know if you've ever sung the Agnus Dei with your voice. You probably have sung the Agnus Dei by Bird, have you? From the 4-part Mass. Yeah. Well, that was written for 4 voices. Mass for 4 voices. That's what it was. It wasn't written for 4 voices in a choir, and as a result, when you hear it sung in a choir, it sounds crap. I mean, you're really working hard to make a big choir sound like 4 solo voices. Composers need to write for smaller ensembles. They need to stop looking at the checky that's coming in at the end of each month from the publisher, and they need to start looking at what people need. If 4 people can get together in a room and sing, we need more repertoire written for 4 voices. We need more repertoire written for 7 voices. We need, as directors, as artistic directors in my case, and as conductors, to facilitate our singers so that they can do that without us. And more importantly, I think, and I'm now stepping on eggshells, we need to bloody well go out and learn how to sing.
Yeah.
If you can't sing and you're conducting, use this time to go and learn to sing. Learn what it is. Any conductor that cannot sing should not be conducting. Otherwise, you are directing traffic or semaphore. It doesn't mean anything. This relationship then, when things do come together, you bring back people who have become proactive and you have a richer experience together. So the fact that I'm amazed how many choirs have stopped, I don't think Zoom is a good idea. I don't think choirs on Zoom is a good idea. I mean, it's a good idea if everyone is drinking wine while they're singing. But I can't see what the point of it is otherwise. It replaces what we've lost. But we haven't lost anything. This is a stage moving forward. Life does not go backwards. And those of us that embrace this change, well, hopefully we'll be listened to when it's over. But I don't know. I find that choral music is it's one of the most conservative communities of artists I've come across. So I think a lot of that is to do with the fact that it's also the community at large with the least sense of its own value within the musical firmament.
Yeah, and I think I've got a reason for that. A lot of our jobs are justified in America based on how many children, for those of us who teach school, how many kids can we fit in the room? Because in the past, and I think that might start to have to change, but one of the value of a choir teacher for a large public or state funded school in the United States is that I can teach 2 or 3 times the number of students in a period than an English teacher can. And so I save the school money by doing. And so one of the things I've thought about during this pandemic, and also as I reflect on what my school program will look like going forward, it's very likely that our local government tells us that we've got to have a minimum class size, a maximum class size, where the tradition, the 100 plus year tradition in my school choral program of having this large 80 to 100 voice concert chorale might have to go by the wayside. And on one hand, I'm very sad about that, because they might tell me you've got to take that group of 85 next year and break them into smaller groups, and all of that. But then at the same time, I think, wow, what an opportunity it could be to, because one of the things that I've always lamented about my program is that when the kids get into those large groups, they tend to develop leaders who get all of the acclamation, because they're
get all the attention.
Get all the attention, and then there will be another 50% of the group that oftentimes feels very unimportant.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something you have to think about very much. But I'm going to even present a larger concept to you, and that's that when you are dealing with the hierarchy of classical music, you have their conductors and soloists, and then you have opera, and then you have symphony orchestras and composers and classical composers and the avant-garde, and then you come down and down and down and down and down and string quartets, and then there's where we are. And in fact, the correct portrayal of that graph is the other way around. Everything else is copying the human voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Art is an expression of community. And that's whenever Mendelssohn decided he was going to become a bloody superstar, that's when things changed. Choirs and vocal music and singing, and the concept of people singing together in a community should be at the core of classical music. And we are the ones that the chorus master, that's after everyone else has been brought forward. Oh, well done, aren't they great? Look at them. Oh, look at all those amateur people there who are really only here for fun, but they're not really serious artists, like all these people who are professionals. I don't have a lot of time for that. And that gives you a terrible sense of lack of self-confidence. And that bleeds into the school system, where it's all about getting bums on seats as far as the schools are involved. And if you win a big prize and it gets in the local newspaper, it's free advertising for the school. We have a great music program. And look how inspiring that music teacher is. But you know what? The maths teacher is way more important because that's the one that's going to get you a job. Whereas this is really kind of frivolous. And that's because if we allow a society where music is of such low priority, that in the actual society that it exists in classical music, it's the lowest part of the equation, then you have a problem with that society. It is not, some societies, it is not that way. Estonian society is not that way. Choral music is at the core of their society. I have a Georgian friend, and her society is based around people singing and people singing in communities and passing on their extraordinary language. My own society, singing is at the core of what we do. And yet in our schools, because we adopted so much of what the British left us, we adopted a lot of their infrastructure, but we also adopted their rubbish school system. Their music is way better than ours. In Ireland, I am ashamed at the way music is taught and the way it is prioritized in schools. Mm-hmm. I mean, you actually get more points for getting a high mark in mathematics than you do in any other subject. Mm-hmm. Like music, which is, you know, and I know, and anyone listening here who's a serious musician knows, music changes your life and it alters the lives of young people. It is transformative and it is what can build it can be the one thing in their lives that they can grab onto. And it is at the bottom end of the scale of the food chain. And bear in mind, you facilitate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's we get choral musicians definitely, and in the U.S. for sure, and that's really all I can speak to. But we do have an inferiority complex in terms of the overall hierarchy, and part of it is because the choirs oftentimes are so large. Which, by the way, there are some benefits to having large community groups, but it does create a sense of. Are you familiar with the Pareto principle?
Sorry, say it once again.
Are you familiar with the Pareto principle?
No.
Okay, so it's this concept that anytime you gather a group together, it tends to sift out. It's a psychological principle that it tends to sift out that a very small percentage of that group will kind of take leadership really quickly, and then everyone else will kind of achieve a little bit less. Like,
so is that based on gender, just out of interest? Because women don't work the same way as men at all in that way.
No, so it's not really. It's so think about it this way: like if you've got a choir of say 80, and I do find this to be true. Is you've got a choir of about 80, you will get a very small percentage of them that are making almost all of the sound, especially with young untrained singers, because they tend to let the person who is the loudest do the leading.
Yeah. Oh no, I understand that. Yes. Sorry. In that context, yes, I would agree with you. Definitely, that's not gender based.
Yeah. Right. Not gender based at all. It's just probably has to do with personality. Has to probably do with personality. Probably has to do with just the confidence level of each singer and their training. Mm-hmm. So there's a benefit of being together, but at the same time, I find that those students that aren't contributing as much as the other students that are, they deep down, they know they're not contributing as much. And over the course of time, when the concert happens and everyone's applauding how great we were, I think at some core part of them, they know that it wasn't really them making all the noise. And even though they smile and their mom takes pictures, I think it eats at some kids that they're not the one really making the noise. And so I think really, for me, that's if I can look at a silver lining in the possibility of all, like you described, all these small possibilities of small groups of people getting together to sing, is that maybe we can figure out some way to educate each of these young singers that they are critically important.
I think the leadership has to come from the top, though. Mm-hmm. It really does. I mean, this concept of handing proactivity back to people is a very important thing. It really, really is. I mean, how many adults have you worked with who have said, when I was, and sometimes you'll find somebody when you're dealing with an adult group and very, they're, I don't know, there's something really wrong about the way they're singing and their attitude. And if you delve in any way deeply, they say, well, when I was in school, I was told my voice was too loud.
Oh, I've heard stuff like
Um,
that. Oh,
mm.
so many times.
Well, every time you hear a director ever say that, they don't know what they're talking about. I hear it in professional choirs. I hear it in, well, no, that's not true, because professional choirs, professional is a state of mind, and it means something different here. If you look at a professional choir performing, each one of the singers is making the same effort to sing. They're making the same effort to combine. When you're looking at amateur choirs, very often you will see individuals taking that lead role that
Yeah,
you're talking about.
right.
Well, that's not the fault of the singers, that's the fault of the director. And that is a person skill. It's not actually one which is related to singing at all. And it's not really a solution to subdivide people out into smaller groups and get them to sing alone and get them to gain confidence. That's not really what it's about. It's about facilitating everyone to do the same thing. So it doesn't matter whether the voice is big or small, or you perceive that your voice is big or small. As long as you are all trying to do the same thing, then it doesn't matter that one voice is louder than another, because everybody then is contributing at the maximum that they are capable of within the
Yes.
context of those rules. And the
Yes.
problem is, Chris, defining those rules. We've had to define them with Anuna, and as a result, when we do workshops with choral ensembles, our aim is to try and neutralize that effect, where the first time I see a singer singing louder than everybody else, I never say sing quietly. I ask the singers around them to explain what's going on. And if I have a very simple theory about that, is that sound produced correctly by the human voice for singing and for our art form goes that way. All right. And in fact, if you've, particularly when you're dealing with trained singers, you're dealing about the stream of air, and then you're talking about the sound appearing somewhere near my lampshade over there. It's almost like it's a spinning orb of light is how I would visualize it, and then you're singing to that, and the voice is not occurring here; the voice is occurring over there. So that concept's a really simple one. So if you've a loud singer standing in a children's choir, and then you have two singers on either side, if the singer is loud to you but not to them, then the singer is doing the correct job. If the singer is loud to the extent that the other two singers are being occluded by what they're doing, then the sound is traveling that way. And we know that when the sound travels that way, it's not being produced correctly. That wonderful thing of watching small children producing sound, and it's all that sound out there. But when the sound is it's being held back here, and what you're hearing is their signing heads, and you're hearing their mouth and the tension in their jaw, and that is what you're hearing. So in Anuna, there's once you cannot hear the person beside you, that means then that they're doing the same thing you are. It's not that they're doing something different. It's that you are no longer aware of what the person is doing beside you, other than that you're both doing the same thing, because the sound is not occurring in this place. And when I deal with youth choirs, that's actually the entire idea behind what I teach them, that if you have a loud voice, it's splattering. It's going that way, and sound goes that way. So visualization exercises can really help with that, and very simple ones which relate to the way you breathe and the relaxation. And of course, meditation is such a major role for young voices, as we know, in this world, and for ourselves, let's be honest.
That explanation, though, that you just gave is blowing my mind, just because it's so simple. But
I know.
but and I love it in the sense that when I sing, so when I put on my performance hat, some of my, because I think you earlier mentioned that you kind of visualize the sound and shapes and all of that, and I feel like I kind of do too. And I find that if I'm singing next to some of my favorite people that I've ever sang next to, in all the variety of different groups that I've sung in, then I feel like my sound can cut straight into the room, and their sound is cutting straight into the room, and it mixes like way out there.
Well,
But
you've
when
now described opera.
yeah,
That's opera. That's the whole point of opera.
yeah. But when on the flip side of that, when I've stood next to singers that I find hard to sing next to, then I feel myself working really, really hard to get to cut through their sound.
You're actually working laterally, and you need to be working forward.
Yeah.
I mean, the other problem with these very simple ideas that we use, and I must admit, it is something that does gall me a little bit. I mean, the concept of what we call the Anuna technique is one which is given away. So when people come and they work with us, they work with Lucy Champion and myself, and the singers in the group. We use them as facilitators for workshops. They're actually having this immersive experience where you're addressing all these things. It's like you're stripping away all the outer parts to get to the core of what the meaning of singing is in an ensemble. Mm-hmm. Very often I do know that when I say things like I just did there, people go, that's it. And it can be dangerous. I mean, there's too many times people have only picked up a small amount of this, and it can be very, very, very detrimental if you don't know what you're doing. And it's something, sure. I mean, it is an ambition of mine that one day the choral fraternity will actually seriously sit down and engage with some of the ideas that we're involved in and stop coming to us because they're going somewhere else and they want to stop in and say hello, and be in Ireland and go to Christchurch Cathedral and Glendalough and let's have a workshop with Anuna. Oh, hang on, they're saying things that are a bit controversial. And then think, this is amazing. So we've actually stopped. It's not something I'm comfortable doing. It's not these ideas are not gratuitous. They are things which are meant to change choral music fundamentally. And even if that's only in a small way, I seriously believe that if enough people knew what we were doing, all the people all over the world doing similar things would be able to link together. I do find that choral music tends to be quite exclusive in that way. I mean, it does amaze me that my colleagues, I have no real contact with my colleagues in the UK, for example, at all, except say hello. They're not looking at what we're doing. I'm watching what they're doing, but they don't really have any idea what we're doing. And in America, they've this idea of us walking over fields, and that's what they think we do. But even there's a couple of live videos of Anuna up, which were not done for PBS, and you'll see them on YouTube. And you can see the singers singing. And I wouldn't mind, but that ensemble that were singing that in 2015, most of the people had only been singing in the group for a month. And at least two of the people had never sung with the group before, and we filmed it. And it's quite extraordinary. You can see people working really hard to do as little as possible. And I've never been asked by anyone about the techniques being used. And we're doing things that a choir of that size really shouldn't be able to do with no conductor.
Isn't it true, though, that I appreciate what you're saying about the techniques and people not noticing them, because I could totally see that. But I think you used the term diddly idly earlier, and would you be able to say that it could be some of the diddly idly stereotypes that people have about the group that pay the bills?
I mean, you have to look back at the perception of traditional music, and I mean, as I say, there's nothing wrong with people dyeing their hair green and drinking green beer on St. Patrick's Day. But bear in mind that what a lot of the traditional music that became part of the Irish American tradition was actually not traditional music in the same sense as we have it. There were a lot of people in America who went over and were very serious about their music. Some of the great collectors of Irish traditional tunes and songs were actually Americans. And in fact, you see the influence of the complex forms of music and Appalachian music, and you hear it goes into bluegrass, and I mean that those complex rhythms. You even see it in jazz, and though that's art music. That's, you know, it's music which is a highly sophisticated art form. I mean, Ireland's a highly sophisticated European country.
Right.
It's an extremely high standard.
I'm going to stop you because
that's the issue we have.
Right.
You know,
I think you might have misunderstood my question, because what I didn't mean is that Anuna.
No, I did understand your question. I understood your question fully. You say that a degree of the success was because of that connection to this perception of Ireland.
That when an audience comes, they think they're going to see some kind of traditional Irish.
That's not our intention. I
get it. I just wonder if
one of the greatest gifts we were given on the first time we went on a little short hop to America. I think that happened. I can't remember. It was 2002. We did about 5 dates, and I sat in venues or stood on stage in venues and watched people leave the auditorium. I'd say in every single gig within 20 minutes of the performance starting. And I enjoyed it very much. I do remember somebody, I can't remember where it was, Palm Springs maybe, and we were singing and we started off, and 5 minutes into the piece, a woman in the front row started laughing uncontrollably. And she just didn't know what to do. And because she had come, because this was Irish music. And it's not Irish music, it's music written in Ireland by an Irish composer. And most of the singers would probably be Irish, and some would be even Americans. And the fact of the matter is that, you know, it's not our business to adhere to those stereotypes. Like, for example, we only put Danny Boy into our repertoire in, how old were we? We were 25 years old when we put that into our repertoire. And the only reason I put it into the repertoire was because I had to look at the piece and see if I could do something that would change the way the song was actually perceived. And I don't mind saying it's the only version of Danny Boy that I actually, beyond it being a song with the solo singer singing it, it's the only choral version that I like. It takes the melody and puts a frame around it. It doesn't try and enhance the emotion. It doesn't try and do anything about that. It allows the singers to transmit the words. And I kid you not, I have seen the singers cry on stage, and they're not Irish. And they're not thinking about Ireland. They're thinking about the times that this song is sung in people's lives and what it means. And when we go to Japan, people cry, and they have a version of Danny Boy. It's nothing to do with Ireland at all. The words, it's about a child leaving home and the mother, and they cry when they hear it. So that's almost like a magic in that melody. Mm-hmm. It's not owned by Ireland. And when we're in the Netherlands, I mean, the Dutch are not really like the Irish at all in many ways. But when we're there, I say the same thing when we sing that song. I say, you know, we only appreciate the beauty of our own home when we're away from it. And we only appreciate For example, a song like Danny Boy, we'd laugh at it and we would never do it. But it's like the Dutch understand Ireland better than we do. So that in America, you must never be disrespectful when people have this wonderful visceral response to what they perceive Ireland to be. You know, the country itself doesn't belong to us. The ideas of that country and the ideas of home, that's the key to it.
Just wanted to kind of wrap up the one part of your technique, the conductor, the conductorless or conductor role ideas that you feel like sometimes in the choral profession feel controversial. In other words, you feel like the ideas that you're presenting are controversial. Again, I mentioned earlier, I share a lot of those philosophies. They don't seem controversial to me, but I would say that I understand why they're controversial in that let's say, I'll speak first person, but let's say I just spent $200,000 to get a degree in conducting, an advanced degree or a doctoral degree in conducting. And then someone comes along and tells me the conductor might not be the most important person in the room. And then I come across a person who thinks that maybe the conductor isn't as important as maybe I thought I was becoming by getting that advanced degree. I can understand being like, whoa, hold on a second. I got this degree so I could control the aspects of the music making. And so I get that mindset. I imagine that it's a bias that we don't even know that we are getting when we get our conducting degrees. But again, I think I completely agree with it. I trained myself as a conductor so that I could pass my knowledge off to students and to the other singers to try to empower them to make art. And so,
well, hold on a sec. I want to stop you there because I need to be very clear with you about this.
Yeah.
That I have seen, the further up you go in conducting, the further up to the top of the conducting ladder in your country and in Europe that you go, the less technique is involved in what you're doing. Technique, the aim of technique, if you're a singer, let's keep it simple. If you're a fencer or you're a basketball player, the aim of technique is to learn it and then conceal it.
Yes.
There's a great sketch in The Simpsons where Homer Simpson is there and he's mayor or president of something or the head of Duff Beer or whatever. And he goes in and he's getting a new suit made and he goes into the tailor and he goes, and his PA says to Homer, he says, let it all hang out. And Homer goes, and then he says to the tailor, conceal it. The point is that that's nothing to do with Homer. That's to do with the tailor. The job of the tailor is to conceal the fact that Homer's a big fat pig. So let's apply that to your conducting degree.
Yeah.
Properly taught and with the same motivation behind it and without the word control involved. Because I think that's got to be so careful about the use of language. And that is the wrong word. Like blend is another wrong word.
I agree.
Blend implies that you have to work with the person beside you. And in fact, the correct way to approach working in a choir is that you are working separately, together, not together, and then trying to get over the fact that in some way you're connecting and it's not connecting there. And then it's about the conductor going, please, this is so unnatural, save me. And they're going, I know how to save you from this unnatural act that the two of you are involved in. And the point we have here is that degrees are sometimes about just the degree. And then you get the degree and then you're a conductor. Let's be honest, that's a problem with every single degree.
Mm-hmm.
I did a degree in English, and I left with a love of English that was so intense and the creative process involved in it. And I know I was in a class where people got the same mark I did or whatever, and they had no clue what they were doing there for the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, each one of us is individual. The greater your technique, the less you do to show it. I have had master classes, and my colleagues have had, with American conductors, where it is all about control. And immediately they do that, we haven't really anything we can do, because that's what they want to do, not what they've learned. And then I've had high school conductors in with me. I mean, I could name about 10 of them. And they start off, and then I just say one thing. I say, right, let's get the choir going. And then we do a couple of warm-ups, and, well, we don't do warm-ups, but we get the choir moving, and we get the conductor moving with them. And they just stand there, and they're going, oh my God, because they're musicians. They're not bus conductors.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about them. It's about, and you can see the love that the choirs have for those people. And the fact that any choral director, particularly one that would be dealing with, a group of university students, would take some nobody from Ireland, leprechaun from Ireland, who's coming in and telling you, you know a lot, but you know what? You could know a lot more. And they sit back in front of their choirs and they humble themselves in front of their students. They're big people. And you know what? I would say they're the vast majority of people I work with. I mean, watching Charles Bruffy with this hand motion, and I'm watching it, and I sometimes, I remember singing when he used to conduct Phoenix Chorale, and trying to work out why people were having difficulty interpreting what he was doing. And then I realized, oh, this is all my music. I know it all off by heart. And I'm glued to what he's doing because he's forming the sound the way he wants it. And whether I agree with what he does or not is not relevant. I'm having an artistic interaction. And afterwards, I come and say, I don't agree with what you did. And he goes, blah, 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 blah. Now we're having an interaction. And that's awesome. And I love it. And that for me is what choral music should be about. We are guides. We're not giving directions. We go with our choir.
Yeah,
and on
absolutely.
that note, I think probably I have spoken enough. I hope somebody talks to me again over in America after this.
Well, I think these are all times for challenge and growth. And I think there's a really important place for these types of discussions where, it's okay to critique a system.
Your problem in America is that you need to stop looking everywhere else. And you need to take the things that you're doing that are awesome. And I love that word. You're doing so many amazing things, and you need to focus on those things and create a new form of choral music. And you have so many people there innovating. It doesn't have to be shackled to traditions. No one sings English choral music as beautifully as the English do. So it's grand, but why do you want to parrot someone else's tradition and then say that is the definition of it? Each one of us is an individual. Each part of America should have a different choral voice. Each ethnic group should be allowed be that voice themselves and feed into the one and feed into the whole. I mean, I don't think the value, you see, it's why I had that problem with gospel when I went there first. Gospel makes me cry, whereas an awful lot of choral music I hear when I travel makes me cry, but for completely different reasons. It's when people sing from their souls and their hearts, and it's real. Music should be always real. And I mean, of all the bloody countries in the world, the home of so much amazing popular music, why should choral music be so rigid and so intractable? If the people then go out and they walk out the door after you've had that lesson with them, and they're fabulous singers and not actually using, well, it's not true. There are loads of people who are using the skills that they have. But look, it's there for the taking. You just use this opportunity to reboot, press the restart button. It's time for new ideas, and it's time for people to come together. Bear in mind something. More people practice choral music in the classical sphere than in any other form of classical music. And you have the smallest voice, you're the least well-funded, and in the education system, you're probably among the least important subjects. Ponder that. Why don't you sort that out now? And come back to me. Now, I won't be able to help you, but come back and I'll give you loads of gratuitous advice.
That's wonderful, Michael. I don't find I don't find any of that controversial. I think these are all things that we are at work discussing and dissecting, and I think it's all wonderful, and I think people are going to really be challenged as they listen to this conversation. So I want you to be able to go to sleep soon. So we'll wrap this up.
Oh, it's okay. I mean, I'll be grand. Anyway, listen, it's been lovely, Chris. Thank you very, very much. And by the way, just to let you know, you've done a great interview. I can be a big talker, and you listened, which is nice. I appreciate that.
Well, I have the same gift of gab, but I was really challenged by a lot of the things that you said, and like I said, there are a lot of things I agreed with, but I just hadn't ever heard them explained that way. And
well, that's why it's important to get perspective from people with opinions.
Yep.
I mean, I do find that is the problem with Irish choral music, that the moment I've never felt any different about having an opinion. My problem has been that very often there's nothing worse. It's great when people disagree. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely brilliant. I gave a lecture over there once some years ago, and I was introduced as, this is Michael McGlynn, and he wants to get rid of conductors. And afterwards, a professor in question came up afterwards, and he said, "I'm so sorry I did that. Now I understand what you're doing." I said, it's completely believable. But the fact that he'd say it and raise me up, and I went, God, fair dues to you for saying it, because people don't say that.
Yeah.
Whereas at home, it's much easier to ignore what you don't agree with.
Right. Yeah.
That's not a good thing.
I don't want to get rid of conductors either. It's how I pay for my house. But I do want to challenge what we think a conductor's role is. Because that doesn't have to stay the same. We can still facilitate community. We can still facilitate education. We can still facilitate art making without having the role of the conductor be the same as it was 200 years ago. And this was fun. I really enjoyed that. And get some sleep.
Thank you, Chris. And you take care of yourself. And you've frozen again. Good night. Good night.
All right. Bye-bye. So special thanks to Michael for coming on the show and having such a long and in-depth conversation on so many interesting topics. That second part really got into some very self-questioning types of things for choral directors. So I hope you enjoyed that, found it challenging, and share the conversation with your friends, share the conversation with your colleagues. I think those are ideas that are worth pondering, even if you didn't agree with all of those things. I think they are conversation starters. I especially enjoyed the overall concept of using this time where we aren't singing with each other anymore for a while to have that be an opportunity to reset and pause and think about what we do, why we do it, and then the opportunity when we start again to start again fresh and start again with new ideas. It's a wonderful opportunity, and I love Michael's outlook on that. So just a reminder on the way out, if you enjoy the show, if you support the show, best way for you to do that is to head over to the Patreon. That's patreon.com/Choralosophy. For as little as $3 a month, you can become a patron of the show and help in ways that you cannot possibly imagine with keeping the show going and keeping the show paid for, so that I can keep doing it as long as I need to do it and want to do it. I think I'm having fun. This has been a challenging time for sure, but the Patreon members are really keeping me going, so we appreciate that. Then, of course, the sponsors of the show, sightreadingfactory.com, ryanmain.com, graphitepublishing.com, and vocevista.com/choralosophy. These are all great products. I'm not going to spend a lot of time today talking about them. Just wanted to remind you that those are out there, and all 4 of those companies have a Choralosophy checkout code that'll get you a 10% discount if you need Sight Reading Factory membership, sheet music, awesome software to analyze the overtone spectrum of your singers' voices. Just really cool stuff there, and awesome people and awesome companies. So check those guys out. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.